12 warships loomed over a Kansas farm, sent to punish the man who fed a wounded enemy. No weapons, no armor, just a crowd standing in the field, staring up at the sky, refusing to back down. The first beam struck, and everything changed. But what happened next will shock even those who thought they'd seen it all. First, let's go back to where it began. The morning air smelled of dew-soaked earth and scorched metal. Ethan stood by the porch, calloused fingers clenched around a chipped enamel mug, its heat long gone. Beyond the trampled wheat, the horizon shimmered with an eerie glow. They hadn't made a sound when they arrived. No sonic boom, no engines, not even the hiss of displacement. Just silence. Massive, choking silence. The warships floated like monoliths, black and seamless, blotting out the sun in jagged patterns. Vera hadn't moved since she saw them. She sat cross-legged on the old bench, her hands cupped tightly around the tin cup he'd given her, now empty. Her skin, though no longer pale from hunger, shimmered like heat ripples above a flame. Her jaw was clenched, not in fear, in recognition. "They're Dominion class," she whispered, her voice thin and dry, as if dragged across razors. "Command Division." Ethan didn't ask how she knew. He just took a breath through his nose, deep and controlled, grounding himself in the scent of wheat and engine oil. The land was flat for miles, open like a throat. No cover, no place to run. But he wasn't planning to run. His truck still had a blood-stained blanket in the back seat from last night. That alone told him everything he needed to know about who he was now. Vera looked up at him. Her pupils had narrowed to sharp vertical slits, like those of a cat caught between fight and surrender. "You should give me to them." Ethan's breath caught. There it is, he thought. The easy answer, the path of least resistance. Save himself, save the farm. He could drive her into town, leave her in front of the sheriff's station with a note. No one would question it. Instead, he shook his head slowly. "I've buried one person too many in that field." A flicker, confusion, passed through her face, and then something deeper. She said nothing more, but her grip on the cup relaxed. Ethan took a step down from the porch. His boots crunched against gravel. The wind had died, the clouds above unmoving, as if time itself had stalled. He squinted at the nearest warship. Its underbelly pulsed with a soft violet glow, alive and watching. "I don't know what kind of war you brought to my doorstep," he muttered, barely audible. "But I'm not handing anyone over." Above, one of the warships tilted slightly, like a predator adjusting its gaze. And the silence thickened. The field had changed. What once was wheat, golden, whispering, alive, had become a silent gathering ground. People stood shoulder to shoulder in the soil, their boots sinking into the soft earth as if rooting themselves into the defiance it now embodied. They came in trucks, on foot, some still in hospital gowns, others with prosthetics gleaming under the pale Kansas sun. The wounded, the overlooked, the forgotten. The kind who knew what it meant to be discarded and what it meant to be seen. The Dominion's projection shimmered above them like a false god, its edges fracturing in the breeze, casting a sterile blue light over faces lined with grief and quiet rage. Commander Rykor Thane's expression remained impassive, a chiseled monument of authority. His voice echoed again, cold as metal. "Interference with Dominion protocol will be interpreted as an act of planetary insurrection." Ethan didn't flinch. He stood at the center of the field, flanked by men and women with shaking hands and unwavering spines. He held no weapon. His strength came from somewhere far older, something that didn't blink under pressure. Vera remained on the porch, watching from behind the screen door. Her breathing was shallow, The last time she saw a crowd like this, it had ended in fire and screaming. But this was different. No one moved with fear, only intent. The air was heavy with it. A reporter pushed through the crowd, sweat streaking through the dust on his face. "Mr. Cole," he called, camera drone hovering beside him. "You understand this is suicide, right? These ships could flatten the county." Ethan nodded. "Then let them show the galaxy what fear looks like." The broadcast was picked up off-world within minutes. News stations scrambled to interpret it. Was this rebellion? Madness? Martyrdom? The footage of a weathered man standing unarmed in front of 12 Dominion warships played on every channel, the kind of image that bypassed logic and went straight to the gut. And somehow, the warships didn't fire. Vera's fingers dug into the wooden frame of the door. Her entire life had been forged in ranks and ranks of silence. Soldiers who obeyed, civilians who cowered. Never had she seen anything like this. These people had no bond to her, no obligation, no treaty. They knew nothing of her victories or her failures, yet they came. She turned toward Ethan as he stood firm against the Dominion's gaze. "Why are they risking their lives for me?" Her voice was barely above wind. Ethan turned, voice low, steady, like the soil itself. "Because they see you, the way I did." And for the first time in Vera's life, she felt the weight of being seen, not as a weapon or a deserter or a target, but as someone worth standing for. The night sky did not weep, it bled. Beams of searing white light fell like divine wrath, carving trenches of fire into the earth. The air buckled with heat. Wheat stalks crackled, twisted, combusted. Ethan's barn, the same one he rebuilt after the tornado of '34, the same one where his wife used to laugh while bottling preserves, vanished in a plume of ash and memory. The flames leapt, eager and hungry, consuming every piece of the life he had tried to protect. And still, the people did not run. Some screamed, some wept, but none fled. A young woman shielded her daughter with her body. An old veteran, legs braced on metal prosthetics, stared up with unblinking defiance. A nurse gripped a protest sign so hard it splintered in her palms. The field held, not because it could resist fire, but because the people within it had already burned. In wars, in loss, in betrayal, and they had nothing left to fear. Vera stood amid the storm of light and ruin, silhouetted against the inferno. Her scream tore through the chaos, a sound that had nothing of human fragility in it. It was a sound forged in laboratories, in training camps, in the screams of civilians she had been ordered to silence. It was rage. Not for herself, but for the species that had come to defend her, unarmed, unasked. Her hand went to the jagged scar in her armor, where a shard of Dominion tech still pulsed beneath fractured plating. She tore it free. The beacon activated. Above them, the sky transformed. No longer just a screen for warships. Now it became a window, a reckoning. Holograms as tall as the clouds flickered to life, each more damning than the last. Surveillance footage, thought erased. Command logs stamped, erased under Directive 7. Drone footage from liberated colonies showing mass graves, scorched schools, cages of weeping children. Ethan staggered as the truth flooded over them like a second bombardment. Colder than the fire, heavier than rubble, people fell to their knees, not in surrender, but in heartbreak. And still the feed continued. Rykor's face returned, contorted now, not with fury, but with desperation. "Terminate the traitor," he hissed. "Now!" Dropships broke the clouds, their doors yawning open. But when the soldiers emerged, there were no rifles in their hands, no shouts, no charges, only silence. They looked at the faces in the crowd, their species' enemies, and then at Vera. One by one, they knelt. and the flames behind them, once a symbol of the Dominion's wrath, became the pyre on which its illusion of control began to die. The warships left without ceremony. No sonic boom, no lightspeed flash, no farewell. Just absence. As though the sky had exhaled. Recor Thane's final transmission, intercepted by a dozen rebel relays, was a single broken sentence. "I did what was necessary." Then static, swallowed by the vacuum of his cowardice. The Dominion fractured in silence, its iron certainty undone not by armies, but by a farmer and a refusal. In the weeks that followed, the land began to remember what peace felt like. Blackened fields gave way to green again, smoke dissolved into clouds. The scar where Ethan's barn had stood was cleared by hand. He didn't rebuild it in its old shape. He let it remain open, wide as the sky that had once borne down with fire. Vera stayed. She did not vanish with the fleet, did not resume the armor of a soldier or the voice of a warrior. Instead, she rose before dawn, learned the rhythm of the land, when to turn soil, when to irrigate, how to tell the difference between a good root and rot. Her hands, once trained for weapons, learned the stubborn grace of seed and shovel. She learned how quiet could heal, not isolate. There were days Ethan caught her standing at the edge of the field, watching the horizon, fingers dusted with soil, eyes reflecting the sunrise. She never said what she saw out there, only that it was finally hers to choose. The galaxy named it the Wheatfield Rebellion. Not for its violence, there was barely any, but for its defiance, for its grace. The image of unarmed civilians standing before an empire became a symbol, replicated in murals on orbital stations, etched into protest banners on Dominion colonies, whispered in darkened cantinas as proof that power could be broken without a gun. It spread like wild grass between cracks in concrete. Ethan refused every medal. When asked why he did it, he spoke without flourish. She wasn't an enemy, just someone left behind. I know what that feels like. He never considered himself a hero. But when planting season came, he scattered the seeds with a steadier hand than he'd had in years. The field, like him, had known fire. And still it grew. From a single act of kindness, something larger had taken root, not just across the plains of Kansas, but across worlds. And somewhere in that quiet turning of soil, the stars changed course.